So you got lights in your greenhouse. Well done. Now you gotta figure out, how long do I run them? Well, this is a crash course on calculating supplemental light needs in a greenhouse. Cyrus, you can put in a sweet like explosion effect right there?
Yep.
Cool, thanks man. If you've spent some time on this earth, you may have noticed there are seasons. Well, seasons affect light intensity. So your winter, you might not have much light, but in your summer you got a lot. So how do you know how long to run your lights based on what month it is? Well, you could take a meter and actually measure how much light you're getting in the greenhouse. Probably the easier way though is to look at a DLI map, like the one that just popped up. This is a map that shows the daily light integral for your area. It's going to show how much light measured in moles are received per day based on what month you are in, what month it is, or the month of the year. You figure out, okay, this is the sort of the range of moles per day that I'm getting in my area. Then you got to figure out how much light are you losing through your greenhouse structure. So the covering on it, whether it be a polyplastic or a polycarbonate panels or glass, every one of these will affect your light transmission. On my blog post, you'll see a list of all the different transmission levels for different materials. But you also should factor in how much sort of stuff is up in your greenhouse. So how much metal, how much just sort of things that would block light, heaters, fans, equipment. All of that's going to reduce the amount of light getting to your plants. So what I'd like to do is, on a really sunny day, I take a par meter, go outside and measure the light intensity outside. Then I come inside and measure the light intensity inside, and usually in several areas, and sort of average that. And then I look at the difference between the two. So I'll take my average inside measurement, put it over my outside measurement, and then I get a percent of how much light is actually making it through the greenhouse structure to my plants. So now you have your transmission percentage. Then you want to look at that transmission percentage over every month of the year. So in the summer, Dallas receives about 50 moles of light per day, which is pretty awesome. Even at the 65-ish% light transmission in this greenhouse, which is sort of low because we have a lot of equipment in here, we're still getting over 30 moles a day, which is great because pepper plants, like all these, usually require about 25 to 30 moles a day. Some people even push it higher, but that's sort of the range that I like to keep them in, if possible. Now, in the winter, Dallas only receives about 15 to 20 moles outside. Inside, that means we could be less than 10 moles a day, which makes some sad pepper plants. All right, so how do you figure out how much light your lights are putting out? You could use a par meter like this one. You could use a lux meter like this one, or you could check with your light manufacturer and they could give you an estimate of what your PPFD reading is, your photosynthetic flux density, your photosynthetic photon flux density, which is pretty much a reading of how many micromoles of light per meter square per second are reaching your plants. An analogy that I like to use for this is sort of the flow rate in a hose. So you have a hose running and you have a certain gallons per hour that are coming out of that. That would be your micromole reading. That would be your micromoles per meter squared per second, your PPFD. It's just a reading of that instantaneous flow that's going out. So that's what we're measuring right now for our lights. And you want to measure it at a few points so you can sort of average them. Getting between lights, directly under lights, all the way to the side. And ideally, you set up a lighting plan that will deliver an even amount of light throughout the canopy. I had this lighting plan done for me by ParSource with the goal of hitting 400 micromoles throughout the canopy. I am pretty much exactly at, I'm at 450, and outside right now, it's a really, really cloudy day. That's why I'm shooting it today. We're at 50 micromoles outside, so pretty much exactly on target of hitting 400 micromoles provided by the lights, which is great. That's a lot of power to be playing with. And then there are conversion tables, which I have links for in the blog post link below. Links on links on links. Pretty much, there's a way to convert your lux reading to ppfd, or a micromole per meter square per second, by figuring out what your lighting source is and then multiplying this by a certain number. And generally it comes out fairly accurate. That can sort of make it a little bit easier to test your lighting intensity without having to buy a meter that's easily over $1,000. All right, so you've calculated your flow rate of how much light is coming out of there, your PPFD, your photosynthetic photon flux density. Now you gotta figure out how much are you actually giving in a day. So for the hose, if I have a 5 gallon per hour hose running all day, 5 gallons times 24, then I have 120 gallons. Boom, math in my head. 120 gallons in a day. So we need to do the same thing with our light reading. So if I have a PPFD reading of 400 micromoles per meter square per second, that is my instantaneous flow per second. If I want to get it per day, then I multiply that by 60 to get my flow per minute, multiply that by 60 again to get my flow per hour, and then I multiply that by the amount of hours the lights are on to get my total light delivered. Now that's going to give the total light delivered in micromoles, but we want it in moles, which is generally the unit used for DLI. So you divide your micromole reading by 1,000,000 to get your moles. Let's just look at how much our lights deliver in 1 hour. So if we figured out how many moles the light delivers in 1 hour, and we know how many moles we need on average, let's say in the month of December, where outdoors we're getting 15 to 20, inside the greenhouse maybe we're getting 10 moles, so I need another extra 15 moles. Well, now that I know how much light these deliver per hour, I can figure out how many hours I need to get up to my 25 to 30 moles a day target for these peppers. There's a lot of different target DLIs depending on crop. On my blog post, I list several target DLIs for various crops. And then I also give a bunch of examples of how to do this math so you can check it out again. It's sometimes a little bit tricky at first, but once you do a couple calculations, you realize, oh, this is not that hard. And I'll also have the conversion tables. So depending on what light meter you're using, you can figure out how to get to your micromole reading, and then from your micromole reading to your DLI. I hope that helps. If you're still a little bit confused, feel free to send me a message. All of my contact information is on my website, farmertyler.com. And I'd like to thank Hydrofarb for hooking me up with these lights. It's f***ing sweet. I probably shouldn't have said but I still said it because it's f***ing sweet. Cameraman, can you bleep that?
Yep.
Tight.